Hey, how's it going? Welcome to week 4 of the D&D Diary. This week, in my Del Toro quest campaign, my players started out trapped in Noradz, which is, as far as they know, this city that's ruled by these people called the Rakachar, which are like these people clad in like red leather gimp suits, and then they have these lightning whips. And one of my players is playing a Kensai monk, and he still hadn't chosen his second Kensai weapon. So he was like, well, can it be a whip? And so I said, of course, yeah. So he took one of the whips off one of the Rakachars that they had killed last session, and he just used that as his weapon. They ended up breaking out the front gate the way they had come in. One half of the party decided to break out through one of the windows. They managed to rip the bars off the windows and smash the glass, and they got roped through that way. And the other half managed to trick the community into helping them with the use of a few charm persons. They got into the top floor, and there they found the control room where they could use levers to open the doors and wind up the portcullis. And so they escaped Noradz, and they've continued down the road towards Broad River. However, they were chased by some Rakachars, and they had an altercation with the Rakachars on the bank of the river. That was pretty intense, but they ended up overcoming them pretty easily. So a couple of my players ended up grabbing life and death cards off some of the Rakachars. If you are familiar with the books, you know that these cards are used as a way of justice in Noradz, although you will also know the whole system's rigged. Reese will fill the cup with 2 death cards so that anyone who draws from the cup will draw death. However, my players don't know what they've taken, and so I thought it would be interesting to maybe make them a little bit more magical, and we'll see how that goes in future sessions. One of my players also picked up an item that I'm pretty proud of. It comes from Tom's shop, and in the books it says he has pipes that blow bubbles of light. And I thought, well, what other pipes could Tom have? And one of the pipes I came up with was a pipe that inclines trees and nature to grow towards whoever's blowing on the pipe. I'm unsure of how it will be useful, but I'm really interested to see how the player who ended up buying it uses it in different situations. Yeah, not too much happened in the Del Toro quest campaign. Next week, they'll be headed to the City of the Rats, and they'll have to cross Broad River, and then they'll have to deal with the rats, which last time I ran that, I ended up having to tell my players, the rats are not going to stop coming, because they were just mowing down rats, and they were mowing down more rats, and they ended up using all their abilities and special features, and they were just continuing to mow down rats. We played for like 4 hours, and they just mowed down rats the whole time. So I think I'll tell my players at the start, there's just going to be more rats. There's so many rats. There's literally hundreds of thousands of rats. It is the City of the Rats after all. In my Tomb of Annihilation campaign, last week we left on a bit of a cliffhanger because 2 of my players went down to death saving throws after being breathed on once by this young red dragon. There were 2 of the players left and an NPC, and one of the players couldn't make it, so I had the other player that wasn't playing because their character was unconscious play the NPC that was still alive. And so the other NPC, Vorsha, the player playing her decides that Vorsha will run out and sacrifice herself, which is basically what Vorsha would have done. Vorsha is this selfless figure. She was supposed to be this paragon of kindness, but she's dead now because she successfully distracted the dragon while the other 2 players could rescue my other 2 unconscious players. And the way they did that is they had one person rappel down, grab one of them, pull them back up, make a medicine check, and then rappel down for the next one, grab them, pull them back up. But it seems pretty straightforward, but it wasn't without some critical failures along the way, which were fun. So at the start of the session, it's just Hugh left down there with the dragon in the dragon's pit, and Tinder, the red dragon, comes over, and in a previous battle, she'd ripped off his arm, and he's come back 3 years later to attempt to avenge himself and his other traveling party that all died in that adventure. And so obviously she tries to rip off his other arm, but she doesn't succeed straight away. So there's this weird amount of time where like his arm is stuck in the dragon's mouth and he tries to get it out and he rolls a crit fail. So I rule that as just him ripping his own arm off because it's stuck in Tinder's mouth. And so she thinks that was hilarious that he's ripped his arm off, and she's led him to bleed out as she goes and is distracted by Vorsha. And so when my players get down there, he turns to them to like yell at them and be like, help me, I'm dying, I'm bleeding out. But that would give away that there are people in her den and Vorsha's not the only one who's there left alive, except for Hugh, of course. One of my players just straight up murders Hugh. He throws a javelin down from the cliff to make sure that he doesn't say anything, just because they can't let their position get let out. They are playing an evil campaign, so I guess it makes sense for their character. But I found it a very interesting non-heroic thing to do. And so they do eventually stabilize their friends, which I'm very thankful about. Luckily, the two that were left conscious were the barbarian and the fighter, so they were able to carry the other two fairly easily. They knew they wouldn't be able to make it all the way up the mine shaft without being detected, because they hadn't cleared out all of the kobolds. They'd still left a few up there that they'd snuck around. So they decided to escape down the minecart track towards Harkamar. Along the way though, there's a bunch of monsters chilling in this mine shaft, and there's also, at the end, Harkamar is overrun by fire newts, so it'll be a very interesting next session. It's sort of a little less high stakes, like out of the fire into the frying pan sort of deal, but I think it's a better progression. They were way outmatched in Wyrmheart Mine, but I think Harkamar is a better challenge for their level. And then the third bout was the Curse of Strahd campaign. So we finally make it to village of Barovia, and we meet a few of the locals. One really interesting interaction, we met this lady that sells cakes and pies and that type of thing, like savory treats. And the warlock approaches her and attempts to, charm her and whatnot. And while no one else is watching, he casts suggestion on the old lady and suggests for her to go up the mountain and throw this bottle of orange liquid that we're assuming is poison or acid or something, but we don't actually know what it is. And he wants her to pour it on Strahd just to see what will happen. We made it to the tavern, and there was the Burgermeister's son there who approached us and basically just gave us a quest. And since this was the first quest thread we sort of had to go with, we agreed to help transport his sister out of the town because Strahd has been harassing them, sending all these undead creatures to their house at night. We have to transport her to a town called Valakai, which is the same town my character, Jose San Diego, last heard Isaac, his father's killer, was hiding out. Jose has made it his lifelong mission to avenge his father, and it may be over very soon, depending on the CR of Isaac. But yeah, when we made it to the Burgomaster's house, We found that the burgomaster had died either 2 weeks or 3 days prior. We don't really know because the people of the house keep flip-flopping. The sister refuses to leave before her father has a proper burial. So we agree to help her, and so we bring her father to the church. We have a burial for the burgomaster. As we're about to leave, my character, Jose, asks the priest if he has any holy water. And he says, well, he doesn't have any holy water on him, but he can perform a ceremony, the spell, and create holy water. But while this is happening, it takes 10 minutes for him to turn the water in my flask into holy water. The other characters, notably the lizard folk druid, start poking around, and he finds the trap door that holds the priest's son, and he opens it and the son busts out and he's ready to go on a murderous rampage. So that was crazy. And then that's when he ended the session. So the whole session, there wasn't any combat. It was mainly just exploration, meet the townsfolk, do what we could do. But it was really interesting to sort of learn the lore of Barovia. Not as exposition, but as living there and encountering the people there. But that's it for this week. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.